Wyn and I want to express our gratitude for every one of our listeners. Thank you for being a part of this podcast and sharing this space with us each week. We are now offering an opportunity to work with Wyn or myself individually in a deeper look towards what's true about life and who you really are. If you'd like to know more, email me or Wyn for more details. In a 3-day dive under the noise, anything is possible. Let's find out. Now onto the podcast.
Welcome. This podcast is an exploration into being human and what's possible when there's less attention on the noise in our heads. Warning. While listening to this broadcast, you may experience moments of deep peace, sighs of relief, personal insights, or long stretches of dead air. Do not be afraid. This is normal. Under the Noise with Wyn Morgan and Kate Roberts.
Welcome to Under the Noise. I'm Kate Roberts, and I'm here with my co-host, Wyn Morgan. Hi, Wyn.
Hello, Kate. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing so well.
Good.
Yeah. So we chatted for a couple of minutes before we hit record. And what showed up was actually around a small group that you co-led. And the reason why it interests me to kind of pitch it to you as a topic for today was because I was speaking with another coach and friend who attended your small group event. And she had an amazing experience and had all these shifts that took place in, I guess, her understanding and her seeing and her grounding. And I asked her, as I did you, what do you attribute that to? And both of your answers were very similar. In that there was an openness with the people that showed up, a willingness. But one of the things that she said was that in the group, as opposed to other groups that she had attended, there was this lack of a lot of groups do like breakouts and exercises and activities. And she said, there really wasn't any. We were just together and open. And that really interests me because honestly, like, what's possible in that space? And you and I were just talking about how when I first pitched the podcast to you, one of the things that I remember saying to you was basically like, I want this to be like not entertaining at all. Like people don't necessarily, there's tons of stuff out there that people can be entertained with. Like what happens when you don't entertain them and you show up in a stillness? And that to me, that speaks to me. And so I thought it might be something cool that you and I could kind of explore is that space of stillness that you found in your group.
I can't remember when I realized it was a good idea. Stillness as opposed to entertainment. And I think you mentioned that the participant that
that you talked to even said it was verging on boring. And to me, I'm smiling inside because I'd have seen that as almost insulting a decade ago. 12 years ago, I'd have seen it as insulting. Now I see it as a compliment. Because in my mind, well, the intellect has probably just gone to sleep. And it's really good when the intellect goes to sleep, because that's where insights can happen that are seismic in the way that the person that you were talking about can have, and the other people who came along had. Every one of them. And most of the people who were there, I would say, somewhere between 7 or 8 out of the 9 people who came, their life will never be the same again, in a really good way. It's awesome. When you asked me the question, what do you put it down to? I said, my co-host Jesse and myself, we knew one thing at the beginning, that we would introduce ourselves and a little bit about our story that would set the stall for the weekend. And there were tears while Jesse was sharing. I mean, it was impactful to begin with. So in my mind, that leveled the playing field. There wasn't a teacher versus... So it wasn't, okay, Jesse and I were in front of the group, but it wasn't, hey, we know more than you, we're better than you, that kind of energy. We might know a little bit more, or think we do, but it wasn't as in that makes us different. It was a very level playing field that we're all on this, the 11 people in the room together, looking at how human beings work, what causes stress and distress, and what makes it disappear in a heartbeat when it disappears in a heartbeat. When I answered the question before we started recording today, I said something like this. We let mind do the heavy lifting. Universal mind as described by Sydney Banks in the 3 Principles. The deeper mind, not the intellect, not the computer analytical brain, or the ego and IQ bit, but the deeper part of the mind, deeper part of mind that actually is the intelligence in all things. And when, in my mind, when anyone's in that space, it's really healing just to touch that. And in that space, huge life-changing insights are more likely to occur than they would if someone's being entertained. Not a linear causation, but the phrase that I've started to use quite a bit, it stacks the deck in the favor of a profound insight. It stacks the deck in its favor more when there's more space and quiet. And this is what I remember, going back about, 10 years now. And it was after one 3 Principles conference. I think this one was in LA, so this has probably been in 2016 now, so it's 8 years ago. And a group of us with our mentors got together the day after it finished. And George, was talking about what he enjoyed most and what he got most value from all the speakers. And he was talking, his group of mentees, anyone who had been mentored by him was there in that room, about the speaker having a quiet mind and the audience having a quiet mind, and in that place, that's stacking the deck. And it doesn't mean don't crack a joke when a joke is, there, because humor can be really good too. In fact, as a result of a joke, the mind can really settle down. But that's not the point. The point is, when the intellect is quiet and the minds are quiet, then truth can be heard, felt, seen. And the resonance of truth that you and I have talked about quite a bit in the last few months can be felt. And I'd rather people have a life-changing experience than a fun one. Fun's great. You know what I think about fun, right? It's my biggest, currency of life. But the reason I'm having fun is because I understand a bit of life now, more than I did before. And the reason I understood it was because my intellect went to sleep. My mind was quiet. And all of a sudden, everything looks funny now. So a huge appreciation for having our minds as speakers being quiet, and for the minds of the audience being quiet. What I also remember as well on the Sunday morning, so the morning of day 2, I remember mentioning during the first break in the morning, saying I'm a bit busy in my head today, busier than I was yesterday. I was saying this to Jessie during the break. She goes, oh, wouldn't notice it. Yeah, I know, but I'm just aware of it. I don't need to do anything about it. I'm just aware and I'll settle down again. Which, of course, I did. Especially when I didn't judge it and didn't try. It would just settle down of its own accord. And it did.
I think that getting a sense for that space and the stillness that can come into that space, the insights that come through it. A lack of busyness. It's only in maybe the last 3 or 4 years that I've started to feel an appreciation for that. And I'm just as guilty as anyone else as far as wanting to be entertained or numbed, to get out of my head, to not be in the noise. I've shown up in groups feeling like somehow it's on something outside of me or someone outside of me to create that space for me.
Mm.
You know, it's like, okay, here's my money, make it for me. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's like this expectation almost, and not just from other people, but from me. And I didn't know I was looking in the wrong direction. And sometimes I still don't. So, um, I'm kind of co-speaker in a group where we talk about the three principles and kind of answer questions and things like that. And I just realized as I was saying that I've gotten some feedback from people in the group. And they just say, you know, the way that you speak, or you kind of take your time to answer questions, it makes me settle down, because you kind of stop and get still, um, and it's almost like they're saying, I'm meeting you there in that space. And it's easy to be like, oh, you know, thanks, and like see that as something that I'm doing, but I don't think that it is. I think the only thing that's happening is I've been in this conversation and started to appreciate and get a sense for that space. And you're probably one of the first people that really was like a living example of what's possible there for me. And so I don't know if it's so much anything I'm doing, or just that when people get a sense of that or appreciate it, it's almost like an invitation that you don't know that you're inviting necessarily. But so I just think that's interesting. It's like people can be like living invitations for that space, but it's still not where it comes from. It's still easy to think it comes from me or from you, right? And if someone thinks that that's because of me, then I feel like they're looking in the wrong direction, like I have, like I still do. Because I feel like that space is possible for every single person from inside them, because that's who they are. And I can feel gratitude for people like you that live that example. But also know where it comes from. I feel gratitude for the moments that I see that.
Me too. Somewhere here, as you know, I've got 3 pieces of paper handwritten by you, 6 sides. And if I was to summarize it, it would be how welcome it was for that space to be there more than anything else. That's what you honored and valued more. And it was a really lovely reminder for me. I mean, that we're coming up to 4 years ago, maybe 3. It's at least 3 years ago anyway, right? And it was such an amazing reminder for me about that's the direction. That's the direction. And then, as you said a few minutes ago, when the idea of this podcast existed, it was for this to not be entertaining. It would be to be not high-paced, quiet, meditative almost. In its speed, that we'd rather it be profound than entertaining. The potential for it to be profound, as opposed to the potential for it to be entertaining. The potential for our dear listeners to have, and the dear listener right now, yes, you listening right now, to have a quieter mind. That invitation. And in that space, the potential for seeing your okayness, seeing your magnificence that is totally impersonal, seeing your place in the universe as valid as any other thing that's ever existed in this universe and everything that ever will, equal to everything else, in how amazing that makes you. Any problem that we can then think up becomes insignificant. The capacity to make up problems becomes more inspiring, because look what I can make up, look what story I can create about me, look what problem I can conjure up out of thin air, as well as what magnificence and lovely feelings I can conjure up from thin air. I mean, that capacity that we have is just phenomenal. You know what struck me as well a minute ago was the one exercise that we got them to do in that group wasn't really an exercise. It was a moment of individual reflection where they could sit or they could walk through the garden. But we gave them, I think, 20 or 30 minutes to ponder one question. And then they came back to share. And if I remember, the question was, what do I no longer need to think about? Which given the weekend, made an awful lot of sense. It was on topic. What do I no longer need to think about? And the answers that we got back from the participants, and Jesse and I included in that, from 11 of us, was so different, so deep. Everyone was so moved by everyone's heartfelt sharing and that. And then the thought that popped into my mind was, it would be very easy, going back to something that you just said, which is a very helpful reminder, for the attribution of those insights and that feeling to be the weekend, the other people, that chair, the 16th and 17th of March, 2024 is the cause of this. And we go out looking for that and grasping for it. And I reached for a book that you and I both love, The Missing Link, by Sydney Banks. And it's funny because I put a bookmark on this page on the train going in that Sunday, not realizing that at 4:20 that afternoon, it would be exactly what they needed to hear to overcome false attribution, to see that their insights are coming from the space that they're made of, as opposed to outside. So if anyone has this book by Sydney Banks, The Missing Link, I'm going to read a bit from it. And it starts on page 42. Wisdom is an innate intelligence everyone possesses deep within their souls, before the contamination of the outer world of creation. Find the spiritual wisdom that will guide you through life from within. This is where you will find feelings of love, understanding, and contentment. That the deaf man cannot hear the sound of the crashing ocean waves, or the blind man cannot see the beauty of an autumn sky, does not mean the sea and the sky do not exist. So, like the blind man, close your eyes. Like the deaf man, block your ears. Go inside and realize that which you seek has been there within you all along. This is when the blind will see and the deaf will hear. I keep forgetting that for me too. So I'm tingling reading that out right now. Because my day today would have been far easier if I remembered that. It's been uphill a little bit today. That has been a really helpful reminder. And I think is a beautiful reminder for all of us is to just get a glimpse of that, and then we'll just see how well we're made, and then the rest of our life looks very different from that realization. Thank you. And we'd love to know, for you listening, what you think and any thoughts that have popped up in your mind. Because effectively you've got a glimpse into quite a few things that Kate and I talk about in our work and in our lives, and the impetus behind this podcast even existing. So if you've got any questions or comments, please email either one of us. Our details are where you found this podcast and in the outro that you'll hear from Kate's amazing voice in a few minutes' time. You've been listening to this week's episode of Under the Noise with me, Wyn Morgan, and my amazing co-host, Kate Roberts. We wish you a really good week and speak to you again soon. Goodbye.
Thanks for joining us. We'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and review. If you have a topic or question that you'd like us to chat about, email Wyn or Kate at wyn@winning.co.uk and kate@katerobertscoaching.com. Until then, enjoy what's possible under the noise.